Beep, beep. What is up, ninjas? My name is Sam World, and this is what we're making today. So a lot of you guys have been asking me how to make the Maria Take It Deep bass. Today I'm going to break down the theory in creating a bass like this so that when you want to bring it up, you can understand every step of the way and with confidence. As always, if you guys want to support my sound design work, make sure to head over to evilsounds.com. You can find all of my sound banks for Serum. I don't have a wavetable one for Ableton yet, but if enough people ask, I might make one. Other than that, let's get into it. Now, the track of Maria is in D minor. D minor is one of the hardest scales for newer producers to understand because the question will always come, can I play here? Or should I be here? Now the answer to this question is that both are correct. C, D, C sharp, D sharp are very weird keys for producers because there's decisions that you have to make. Do you go up or do you go down? Do you go up an octave instead? So inside of Ableton's wavetable, what we're going to do is first off, we're going to pick a square wave. If you're going down and dirty, a square is usually the best one as it's going to have the more dirtier sound. And when filtered, will also have the sound of a sine that got distorted or overly saturated. What we're going to do is called subtractive synthesis. The idea is we start with a wave like this and we're going to subtract stuff from it to turn it into what we had. From there, I'm going to choose a 24 style filter. Now this usually means 24 dB. These are called ladder style filters because you can go from 12, 8, 18 and 24 dB pole. The only thing you have to know about these is that the higher the number, the more strict it is. So it lets less high frequencies out. Once we have this here, we're going to go on to shape the sound. Okay. Now in Ableton by stock, there's a huge amount of release, which I'm not a fan of. So we're going to reduce the release. Now the release is when you play a note, click. That bass lingers for a while. So if you're making 808s, the release is good. If you're making a Reese and you want that thing to sound flowy and God knows what, then that's fine too. However, for us, we want to stay firm and want to look cool like Take It Deep. So we're going to do that. We're going to move the attack to the left. That's just the initial hit. Do you want it to come in instantly or do you want to give it a bit of gradualness? Now, if you're trying to make wubs, you go higher. And if you're not, you go deep because you want punch. From there, we have the decay, which is from the max volume to the sustain level. I'm holding down the note. I'm still holding down the note. Okay, so this is going to be as the note is held out. What's the volume where it's going to rest at? Now from here, it's time to shape this sound. Now one of the great things about subtractive synthesizers, like the ones I have here, is that we can use envelopes to tell the cutoff to move. So that's all you have to think about. Whenever you see an envelope, it does it in its own way via ADSR. It's telling the knob to essentially move. It's like your little minions. Okay. So with the envelope 2, we're going to lower down the sustain to attack decay. And then we're going to go into the matrix of the Ableton Wave Shaper and go to frequency click, shows up, envelope 2, open it. Now this is the most important part, okay? I get a lot of comments from people saying, I copied you and the sound doesn't sound the same. When it comes to sound design, it's very finicky, okay? Very, very finicky. As you can see, this doesn't sound too close. So now I'm going to move the filter to 24 dB and maybe pull the frequency back because we're going to with decay on envelope 2, I control that punch. So what I'm going to do now is switch this to mono so that we have somewhat of a retrig. From here, we can switch the algorithm of the filter. Now, if you learn anything from me, I hope that you learn that the reason people love analog synthesizers is what they come with. They're all the same shit at the end of the day, but what they come with, a kind of filter, the way the filter responds, the tone of the saw or the square, that's what we're paying for. And that's where people become very fanatics about the synthesizer of choice. Like for instance, I have 2 Moog synthesizers here because I'm a fan of the filter of a Moog. So from here, this is what these algorithms are doing. It's like you're switching out the filter for another synth. Now, yes, we're in the digital world and maybe it's closed, maybe it's not, who cares? All it is, it's flavor. So for instance, I could go OSR and now I have this drive feature here. The next thing we got to do is, and this is what I teach most of my students that do successful tech house and go down to these notes, is to go up an octave with a saw. Okay. So we're going to grab this saw and we're going to go stem that just stands for semitones. We're going to go 12. That's an octave up. So instead of playing D0, this saw is playing D1. Okay, it's starting to get there. Now from there, we got to lower the volume on that saw because remember, that's introducing frequencies in the upper parts. And then from here, this is where it starts to get finicky because now I'm like, okay, this sounds like maybe I need a little more decay. So from here, you can start to kind of get very finicky with how you want it. So, okay. So yeah, it can get very finicky. And once you start becoming a perfectionist, you're going to care about millisecond values, but it's fine. So from here, you saw me moving this resonance. This resonance is just a boost at the cutoff point. Usually it's used to, one, make it sound more knocky. But, you know, we're not trying to sound like Gorgon City, so we want it low. But I'd still add a bit because this also introduces mid-frequency. So if you ever have a bass that sounds kind of hollow, maybe adding a little bit of resonance is good. Just don't do this because we're not trying to make acid. Pretty much done, but what my hope is that you understand the theory about making these kind of bass lines. Now from here, processing the bass line, well, that's a whole other story, but what I would usually recommend people do is saturate. You always know you need to saturate a all the saturation is doing is grabbing the initial sound source and it is pretty much pushing it harder into an imaginary console where it's clipping and providing harmonic overtones. That just means, think of it like more frequencies that sound good. When you overdo saturation, you essentially get distortion. So saturation is like the pleasing distortion before you start going dubstep and you start making mid-tempo and lowering down the BPM. So with this, it's about flavor. I always say saturate stuff. You can go, you know, it's very forgiving. So that's what that's the thing. If you don't overdo it, you'll be fine. From there, the processing is what's going to make the bass sound what you hear in the song. Now, what I recommend you guys is don't fixate too much on sounding identical to it when it's around the same ballpark, because again, at the end of the day, the kind of kick, the drums you pick is going to determine the kind of master you're going to do. If you can't boost somewhere because your kick is just too heavy, then you're not going to be able to get the same tone. So keep that in mind, but this is how you do it. This is how you get these low gritty bass lines. Remember the theory and it will save you. And as always, if you guys want to support the channel, make sure to head over to evilsounds.com where you can find all of my sound design work. And if you want to support me in another way and you want to listen to my music, you can go on Spotify. You can also listen to it. I've started releasing stuff. And honestly, I'm still waiting on labels to respond because I have a couple of songs done, but labels are always a pain in the butt to work with. So if none of them want to release the stuff, I'll probably do a self-release. We'll see what's up, guys. But other than that, thank you guys so much for the support. And I hope this tutorial on bass lines helps you make the music you want to make. Just freak it.